So I know you've probably noticed that I'm wearing a sweater right now. And I've committed to always wearing the same sweater whenever I come onto the show. So
that's dedication because how hot is it out here right now?
It's I checked, it's 82 right now. So it's not terrible, but it's not comfortable.
Okay, so I did notice, but I assumed that you were like me. So I was thinking, okay, fellow.
No, that's the reason for it, yeah.
We're going to start there. I like that. So the Vann Cave now officially has more chicks than a Rush concert. We got Nicole in here. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, everyone.
Who listens to more podcasts than anyone. Actually, it's one of the reasons we are podcasting. And how many did you listen to today?
Oh, wow. Probably a good 10 or 11, just as the day goes by. But, you know, it helps the day go by.
It does.
Yeah. So she would hear us in here talking and said, you guys ought to just turn that into a podcast. And so here we are. And we got Mike back.
Yeah, we don't sound so excited about it.
Yeah, we got him back. Hey,
that guy.
Yeah, that
just
guy.
That guy.
Well,
don't even pay attention.
We haven't had a Mike episode in a while, so we always need to have those. Hey, so we're going to talk about what is my magnum opus wreck chasing adventure today. And what's strange about this is the only one that Nicole was there for. And the way it turned out, she was the only one that could go when we did it. If you remember that.
I do not remember because there's a lot of alcohol in my life, and I'm cool with that. So I rely on you.
What are you drinking?
This is a coconut water concoction. It's got a name. I totally forgot because, again, booze. But it's really good. It involves coconut water, gin, and cardamom syrup. So
nice.
That sounds good.
I'm having a German thing, Radlberger Pilsner. It's pretty good. Picked that up in Houston. So nice. So in the earlier wreck chasing episode,
Well, just real quick.
Go ahead.
You never ask, but I am having a LaCroix.
A LaCroix, yeah. You need another one?
I might grab one later on.
So
that looks like vintage tap water.
Yeah. That was awesome. Penn and Teller watched the tap water episode. That's really good. Yeah.
Let's take a look at that one.
It's fantastic. Yeah, they get a douchey waiter to sell people.
I have seen
tap
that
water,
one.
yeah.
Yes. One of the brands was Agua de Culo.
Okay.
Yeah, that was good. And they sold gas station food to foodies and all that stuff. Which, we had a very hipster experience in Houston weekend before last, right? Or last week. And I wonder. I mean, we probably ate 57 cents worth of food that we paid $80 for, but it was all really good.
You're paying for the moments that accompany the food.
Well, the hipster bowling alley thing was really cool.
It's the venue. It's not the food.
Yeah, it was definitely the venue. And the thing is, everything about it sucked. Well, not everything. The drinks were okay.
The drinks were good. The cocktails were good.
Yeah, it was, typical local brewery stuff. Not vintage. What am I trying to say? Craft brewers. The bowling alley was okay. The lanes were dry. And it had the weird little string pin setters. If you've never seen those, like where that
was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah.
They're neat to watch, but they bowl weird. I mean, it's.
Wait, how does it work with the bowling?
Well, they're slack.
Mm-hmm.
They're sort of slack, and when you hit them, and the pins go flying, you can still tell that they're connected to a string because they don't fly like just a free pin, but they still. They still fall and everything.
Okay.
But every once in a while, like one will moonwalk across the back. Like I had that whole thing happen. And then whenever it resets, it just picks it all up.
Okay.
And into the little rack, and the rack settles down.
The sound when you actually hit them is not as satisfying as a regular modern bowling alley.
Yeah, it was kind of different. It was a really pretty place. It's kind of, novelty. There were not people with bowling bags and, like custom fit wrist straps there.
And our waiter was really interesting. He was trying to break into the oil fields.
Was he really?
But now I'm wondering, I think that's where our credit card got nicked.
You think so?
I think so, but I'm suspicious of the whole world. So we'll find out. But anyway, just one of our many adventures. So previous aviation archaeology episode, we talked about how the crash map got kind of messed up and corrupted. And so to sort of summarize that, the Air Force used to have a physical map plotted all the airplane crashes that were known because it saved rescue efforts the problem of finding the same airplane more than once. Like in 2015, there was a fire they thought was started by an airplane that turned out to be a 30-year-old crash or 40-year-old crash. They just found wreckage and they didn't know it was there, and so they just assumed it was a fresh crash. So that's why they kept up with this. And the data got kind of corrupted when it was transferred from probably a physical map to a list. And this was after I had all my first cancer surgery. On top of what that takes out of you, both of us had hip injuries about the same time. So there was no severe mountain climbing in our future again. You've done some, you and your sister.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
Because I'm old and,
Well, we were not sure. We did a little bit of day hiking and stuff, and we weren't sure about climbing the mountains. But so what we were trying to do is that a dog trying to break in?
I think
she
so.
is.
Oh, okay. We'll see if she makes it.
The doors are starting.
Well, it's normally Nicole is in the house with the dog when we're in here, so she doesn't care. And I guess now she's butthurt that she can't click toenails on the floor. So anyway, one of the airplanes in the Guads, there was an entry that said a TV-1 aircraft in gully, and that's all it said. In a chunk of land outside of Orla, Texas, between kind of Orla and the Guads. And that has driven me crazy for years. I think I got that map in like 2010. And so you know two things about it. It's somewhere near there, and you know it's there because they wouldn't have bothered putting it on the map if there wasn't still wreckage there. And if it's in a gully, we've seen some of the gullies up there, and it's hard enough to get yourself out, much less, drag wreckage. And that's all the information we had. So go ahead.
You had a photo? I remember staring at that photo.
Which one? Oh, yeah.
Of the dunes?
Yeah, the way we got that, I started looking and I talked to Craig Fuller, aviationarchaeology.com, and I told him what I was looking for. Are there any TV-1s up there?
Was it the TV-1 or TV-2?
It turned out to be TV-2.
Oh, I'm jumping ahead then.
Right?
Because I think...
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's why I brought my notes. Hang on. The TV-2, yeah, it said Navy TV-2 aircraft in gully, and it turned out to be a TV-1.
Okay.
And these are versions of the Shooting Star, the P-80 current fighter at the same time. And so I emailed back and forth with Craig Fuller, and he came out and sent me an email, and he said, you might be interested in this. This could be your airplane. And it turned out to be a TV-1, and it was crashed at Salt Flat. So next to the Guadalupe Mountains, you have Del City, right? Neat little place.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the history of Del City is essentially they were drilling for oil and found a ton of water. So in the middle of the desert, there's a small town with a lot of farmland and a really cool history.
Yeah.
And an iconic figure that owns an iconic bar there, which we'll get to. But aside from that, there is the Salt Flat Intermediate Airfield, which later just became a radio beacon and a radio station, aviation radio, and then now it's a VOR, and there's no airfield there anymore. So we got I had to get the report because it had been classified because that was all Cold War era stuff. We used to be able to just download, like Craig had tons of it, but this one I had to do the Freedom of Information Act request to the Air Force and got the report, and it had pictures. So that was a really cool part of it. And what we found out, it was on February 25th, 1954, and it was a TV1. And I'll put up a picture of it. He took off. It was a ferry flight. Now, we talked before in one of the episodes that a lot of these accidents turn out to be ferry pilots because this guy had thousands of hours, 2,000 or 3,000 hours as a Navy pilot. And I think he had 26 hours in this airplane. And they're weird. It's just it's not enough time to really get used to the weirdness of that airplane, apparently.
So was he was testing it out or
No.
taking it from one spot to another? I remember it being in like a newer plane. What?
Yeah, the airplane. Oh man, I don't have the number of it.
No.
Do you still? If you can still see the report, the first digit is the year.
I think it was. Let me have to pull
It
it
was
up.
getting a new engine,
Okay.
and it got a new engine in San Diego. And he flew it from San Diego, and he was supposed to go to Naval Air Station Corpus Christi.
Oh.
Which is why he wound up in El Paso. He stopped for fuel in El Paso. And what was really neat about this report is he actually submitted a written report in this, which is really cool to read.
Yeah.
He just sounded like a really cool guy. But he had a normal climb out. He said he fueled up in El Paso, and he got over Salt Flat, and he remembered at 1:15 there was supposed to be a radio broadcast from Salt Flat with the current weather.
In the morning or the afternoon?
In the afternoon, 13:15. He was about to call and give his, wherever he was going, Corpus or whatever, he was about to call and give his position report, and he noticed the time. He decided to wait and get the automated weather, which automated, I mean, it was a dude doing it. He would just look at the time and key the radio and give the...
Here's what I have. I don't know if you want to take a look. It's 33 something. I just looked at the number and I couldn't even tell you what it was.
Hang on. See, what I just say, this happened in 1954, right?
Yep.
It doesn't show it. Now, the 33, it'll be like 53 dash whatever, so it's always the year.
Mm-hmm.
His tail number was 33865. In fact, I think I still have the picture. If I do, I'll put it up right here. The example photo of that aircraft is like a serial number away from, like one digit away from this one. So they were on the assembly line together. So he decided to hold off, and I think the airplane was only like a year or two old. Maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
It'll probably hit me after the podcast. Anyway, he climbed out to 18,000 feet, was over Salt Flat, was about to give his position report, and waited for the broadcast. And he went into an inverted flat spin. Just bam, that fast, 18,000 feet. I love the way he explained it in his report. I found myself in a most uncomfortable position, on my back and in a tight but flat spin to the left. And what they figured happened was he lost one of the tip tanks. And if you look at the picture, these are 100-gallon tip tanks. So 2 oil field barrels on each of the wings. So and he was full. He had just topped off and was climbing out. They said it was that. They said it could have essentially been a stall. He was climbing out too slow, and also an issue with the way the ailerons are driven by the hydraulics. That there's a boost that wasn't on, whatever. In any event, he's in an inverted flat spin, and he fought it all the way down. The G-forces were too heavy for him to eject. He couldn't get his hands up to eject. That's one of the reasons ejection levers were moved to different places behind the head and down between the legs, because he couldn't reach anything. And there was a pre-eject. They had to pop the canopy first, and he couldn't reach that, so he didn't want to eject.
Do you know where that was or where that is on those planes?
I believe that one is a lever.
Mm-hmm.
I could be confusing this with another crash, but I think it's a lever, kind of like you picture sort of like the side brake on a car.
Okay, so it's just kind of...
Yeah, they're normally a lever. Sometimes it's a lever between the feet, and you'll see the cables on the... They did it in Top Gun. You see them, one of them flapping around right before Goose gets shot into the canopy. And on those, the canopy, it's all one sequence. You just eject, and it does everything automatically. Apparently on the TV1, you had to pop the canopy first, kind of old school, before you could do that. And he couldn't reach the canopy, the pre-ejection lever, he says. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea. We never found out where that was.
Okay.
I never asked.
Yep.
So, but...
Well, also, real quick, spoilers for a movie that came out in 1986. So...
Oof. Yeah. I don't even want to talk. We'll get to that.
I'm hoping it's 86 now that I said it, because if it's not...
Oh, it was.
You're the movie encyclopedia. You should know.
I'm not going to look it up. I'm just going to go with it.
I think it was 86. Yeah,
yep.
Top Gun, I think it was 86.
You're going to...
I'm almost there.
You will, man. You're trying not to. That's why I moved my phone, because I'll have to look at stuff like that. So 18,000 feet. This guy literally fell out of the sky, flat spin, much like the Top Gun situation. Mm-hmm. He recovered at 800 feet off the ground.
Was he upside down the entire time?
He was upside down the entire time. And he was doing what he could, dive brakes, and everything. And of course, just like in Top Gun, this killed an engine. Jets don't like not having air force in the front. So he essentially was in a glider. He also said, and it was backed up by the report, because he lost that tip tank and he goes into this spin, it ripped the other one off. So that was part of what helped him recover. Mm-hmm. It was balanced, and he got it un-effed enough to land. Now, one of the things I'll talk about, and I'm also going to link the written blog that's very special about this. There are very few crashes in the Guads where people survive, because it's just a mountain range, and normally people are slamming into it. We talked about that in the other aviation archaeology. If you snap a chalk line between Dallas and El Paso, the Guadalupe Mountains are there like a net on a tennis court. And if they get into weather and they try to follow roads, whatever, they just slam into these mountains. So most of these planes are like that. This guy landed just west. This happened just west of the mountains. If this would have been, what did we figure? I think this was like 2.5 miles, 2 miles, if even that far.
Something like that.
Yeah, he would have been gone. He would have been in the teeth of the mountains, in like the worst, shittiest, meanest part of the mountains. But he didn't. He was over sand dunes, mostly flat sand dunes. He missed the flattest part of it, but he recovers and he tries an air start. So he's going really fast. He pulls the nose up and tries to air start, which is essentially like push starting a jet, and that doesn't work. So he runs real quick through his ditching checklist, and he ditched. He bounces, hits again, hits something with the right wing, which slings him to the left. So he smashes his shoulder and his face into the canopy and comes to a stop. There's no fire. He shut everything off and got out. And then he walked like a half mile to he called it a water tower. And this
was confusing, yeah. for us because he was from up north, right?
Yes, I forgot, but yeah.
Because we were trying to figure out if maybe his idea of a water tower was our idea of a windmill.
Okay.
So we just weren't sure.
Yeah, he crashed on a cattle ranch. And so on a cattle ranch, normally you don't see an actual water tower unless it's feeding a house, right? Because
it'll be near a house. But what we were thinking was maybe it was a windmill with a water tank for cattle, or just the difference in terminology.
Yeah, well, we're talking like if it was like at your family's place, where it's a tank elevated, but still got a windmill. But he never said windmill. He kept saying water tower. So so what I did, I pulled up all this day. Oh, well, let's finish. So he's injured his back. His grandson later told me I think it cracked. He had cracked vertebrae. And so he walked another half mile to another tower and didn't see anyone there. So he built a fire, and it started getting dark. And he climbed the tower, and he saw the beacon for the Salt Flat airfield. And he walked 13 miles to the airfield, which was manned at the time. And they scooped him up and took him to the hospital in El Paso. And he lived till 2006, and I actually reached his family on Facebook. That's where I got the pictures. And I'll show the pictures here. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Zieba. And he served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Impressive.
That explains like the 3,000 hours of flight time. And the grandson said he had, I believe it was grandson, had seen him, or he had told him the stories of it and all. One thing though was the lizards. He talked in the report about he had to stop a lot on that 13-mile hike, and he said, I would stop frequently, but the lizards made me want to keep going. And I don't think we saw, and we were there in January. He crashed in February.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, and I've never seen a lot of lizards. I was wondering if maybe it was pack rats but he said lizards. I mean, I guess he saw them, but we never saw anything like that.
No,
while we were there. So I to this day, I want to, it's like I still want to go back there in February and just walk around and see what we hear, or see what we see or hear. But
some prehistoric monsters crawling out of the dunes.
So now we had to figure out.
He saw the lizard during the 13-mile hike at night?
Yeah, on the 13-mile.
I wonder if it's just something that, came out. Were you guys out there at night too?
No, we
or?
weren't.
No, not at night.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just something that's more nocturnal than anything.
Well, that's why I was wondering rats, because now I see a lot of rats and mice up there in the mountains.
Like pack rats?
But no, they're those little weird, the field mice with the real big, like Walt Disney eyes, the real cute ones. That, I mean, they have zero fear of the ones that live around campsites. Because I was up at Bush Mountain by myself, and those little jerks were coming out and stealing my food. So, but so we the problem was we didn't know where it was, and what we did, we kind of assembled a crew. This is the first time we did this. First airplane we had looked for in the Facebook age. We had a lot of friends, like all the guys that normally do crash stuff, and people just wanted to help out, like Mike and Elizabeth at work, whose husband is from Del City.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So they were all on there to kind of help us out. So we would ask questions and crunch data, and all of us were looking at all the satellite images and all the everything you could get on Google Earth. And so we came up with a bunch of targets, and just anomalies, and then things that might be where a pilot would try to stick it or match what he was saying. We got the report, and we had a bearing. We had pictures, and I'm going to put the pictures up here. This is it. This is what we had to go on. It's flat with little weeds and a sand dune, no background. Like, for whatever reason, you could not see above the horizon. So in the same shot that we took later, spoiler alert, we found it, but in the same shot you could see mountains, but in that one you couldn't, black and white film.
Yeah, we were supposing all kinds of things, like maybe it was foggy, whatever. Maybe the film was just degraded.
I was so tired of looking at those pictures.
I still remember those pictures.
Yeah.
Like, we stared at those sand dunes forever.
Yeah. So we knew
that's kind of similar right there.
Yeah. And we both kept saying, well, no, because it's been X number of years. The wind blows. Duh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We did find the road. We tried finding the road that they would have gone in on to pack out the plane, because the way I understood it, the military took that plane out. They didn't leave it there.
Yeah, because of all the, back to the Cold War stuff, it says that they salvaged it. Mm-hmm. So, but it was still in the crash map, so there's got to be something there. But
we were hoping. We didn't know.
Mm-hmm. So we made a map with targets and places to look, and get out there and look at the windmills and see what's where, because the windmills had moved, set up, torn down. We had no idea. And so I did not expect Nicole to go on this. This is where she comes in, because this is not the kind of hiking she enjoys. This is the stuff that Cliff and Bill and I did, because it's, it's very military, very, it's not stop and take pictures and stuff like that. You gotta jam up your targets and all. When we went up the Guadalupe Peak on our honeymoon, she shot 13 rolls of film. That's how old we are. We had film. So
no judgment.
Yeah. She took a lot of pictures. So, when it was all done, I mean, I knew she would go, but I didn't. It's one of those things. It's like I didn't expect you to be interested in it. Like,
I was just there to keep you awake, keep you company.
Yeah, I figured you would like to see the place and do it, but it wouldn't be the kind of hiking you'd be into.
All these years later, was there any interest in actually going on to this?
I like the area. I'd never seen Del City, didn't know anything about it, but I like the Guadalupe Mountains. He took me there on our honeymoon. I've been there a couple times since. It's an opportunity to get out of Midland, opportunity to go somewhere away, somewhere different. So as far as finding anything, I don't care. I didn't care.
Yeah. This is in 2017 too. So
I got to hang out with you.
16,
it was
17.
New Year's Eve. And
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
It was New Year's Eve, the first time we went. Yeah. And it was a place that we both like to go, so I was all in.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd be much help, and I don't know that I was, because I remember taking a nap at some point. Just laying down on the ground and taking a nap.
What happened, we invited everyone in that little group to go, and nobody could go. And so we made the first trip alone. But here's the thing. Neither one of us were interested in camping. She doesn't do cold weather well, and I wanted to be sharp and awake, and we found out there were Airbnbs in Del City, right?
And we got upgraded.
Yeah, so we rented their cheap one. They were all kind of pricey with like a 4-day minimum, but I said, we can kind of base camp, and this is the Salt Basin Dunes part of the park. So it's actually the closest thing to it, closest place to sleep near, because you have to go through Del City to get to that part of it. And I'd never been there. And we checked into a really cool little Airbnb, and the water heater was out.
And what this lady does is she takes local properties and she just renovates them.
Yeah, her name's Laura Lynch, right?
Something like I just know
Lynch.
She's a Dixie chick.
She was one of the original Dixie chicks. Very sweet lady.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's the boutique-y renovation. It's stuff that you would see in a magazine.
Okay.
So
yeah, one of them is a renovated church. They took a church and turned it into like a 3-bedroom Airbnb, and it is gorgeous, but it was expensive. It was overkill because we were going to be hiking during the day and crashing at night. And one of the other reasons is we had all this. Now we have all this computer data and all this crap and these maps, and we thought, and we were there like 3 days, right?
Yeah, something like that.
It was an expedition, and so we just wanted a place to sleep and charge all of our crap, GPSs and whatnot.
And the first place the place we were initially put in was, we couldn't figure out what it was. It looked like an old garage, like a mechanic garage that she had renovated. She later on told us that's not what it was, but she has pictures on each of her properties of what it was originally, and then you obviously see it as it is now, and she does a great job.
Yeah, it was
That's
neat.
cool.
Well, the water heater was out, and so
No,
they
we can't
moved
have
us.
that.
Yeah, we couldn't have that. She was real sweet. She showed up. She says, "I'll be there in a minute," and we figured maybe they were going to swap the water heater. Whatever. We didn't care. She just showed up and said, "I'm going to move you guys to the church. Same charge. Want you to be comfortable." The church was awesome. It was so cool. I'll put up some pictures of it here. Yeah.
She even had, like, it was either apples or bananas and granola bars for us, for anybody, for the guests who wanted to hike. And it was just a neat place.
And we
a cabinet of booze.
Yeah,
for us to
had
try.
booze and games and stuff, and
A telescope.
yeah, there was a telescope, guitars,
Wow,
and
that's
stuff
really
like
cool.
that.
Yeah.
And we had made the George Washington eggnog. Remember the old George Washington recipe? And they stayed and had some eggnog with us. So anyway,
Well, real quick, I only found out about Del City recently because you told me to watch that documentary on it.
Did you watch it?
Yes,
Okay.
I watched it last night, and I was like, this is actually a really cool place. But having said that, it looks like you could walk from one side of that place to the other in about 2 minutes.
You can.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture like where like an Airbnb and all of this would be in that place. And the church that they kind of show in that documentary, is that the place that you guys...
No. I know
Okay.
which one you're talking about. This one was abandoned for quite
Okay.
a while. That one is more toward the restaurant.
The church that we stayed in was on the outskirts, like on the very edge,
Far east side.
of Del City, and it faces the mountains. So when you walk out the front door, that is your view.
Just mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we, it was awesome. We sat out there and had drinks, and then
we partied.
yeah, we sat and drank coffee the next morning, looking at where we were about to go, and we had all of our gear strung out. So off we went, and 3 days of searching. We covered. We didn't really know where to start, other than the plot that the report gives. Now, and like we said before in these videos, they'll say 13 miles northwest of the field, something like that. So that's really all we had to go on. And I looked at it and I thought, if I had to stick a plane on the ground, it would be here in the flats between the dunes, because the dunes are hilly, like Monahan Sand Dunes or any others.
Pretty tall too.
Yeah,
taller than you
taller than
think.
I expected.
Yeah.
Are you guys driving out to the dunes, I guess, and then just walking around there?
We are. We're
Okay.
They had a. Go ahead.
Well, okay, so it is a park.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a road that goes out there, but only to a certain point, and that's basically a parking lot with public restrooms for everybody to park. And from there you walk in, and that's about a mile in.
Yeah, it's like a mile. There's a trail. Here's the thing: when you go to the park, the idea is you park your car. There's bathrooms there. You can't camp. You can
No.
not overnight. You can picnic. They have picnic tables, and you walk to the dunes, to the highest point of the dunes, and you run around with your kids and get sand and all over your body, and then you come back and you leave. But there are miles of this ranch. There's part of the park. So we had called and told them what we were doing, and they said, just let us know when you're out there, so we just know there's weirdos that are off trail.
Because you're not supposed to go off trail. There was a sign posted that talks about how that basically the crust, the ground was crunchy because there was something growing.
It's that gypsum stuff that, yeah. Oh, no, the lichen thing.
Yeah, there was some critter growing on the ground. And the posting basically said millions of years. It took millions of years to get to this point, and any footstep on it will disturb it, and it has to not start all over again, but you're damaging it, and it takes a very long time to regrow. So the idea is you stay on the trails, do not go off, and you had to get permission to go off trail. Well,
they're weird about it. They ask you to please stay on the trail, but it's not a hard and fast rule. And I don't know why that is, but I looked at it, and there's all these old roads and stuff. Like we found an uncovered water well out there.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, just this pit that we could have died in, and I later told the Park Service, hey, you might want to know about this. But we told them what we were doing because we were going to be out there with, looking weird. This isn't a typical weekend hiker thing. And they were like, hey, man, knock yourself out, So we searched and we searched and we searched. And we found no sign of that airplane. We found 2 pieces of PVC pipe stuck in the ground, the exact distance of the crash path and bearing. And we thought, there's no other reason for this to be out here. It's exactly it marked the crash. It was within a few hundred yards of where the crash was supposed to be, but there was no wreckage, nothing, not a scrap of aluminum. But we're thinking, hey, this is close to dunes, so maybe it's covered because it was right by the edge.
Right, and the road that we figured was used, of the one that we identified as the one that was used, was partially covered. I mean, the dunes had gone over it in different places, so that's what we thought was, okay, well, maybe it's under there somewhere.
Yeah, and so again, this had been a cattle ranch for a long time, and I think we figured out the park got it in like 74 or something like that, so it hadn't been ranched in a long time, and it showed. So we finally we got a lot of data. We got to look at all the really suspicious looking stuff, and it was absolutely beautiful. In fact, I told Nicole before that, 2014. This was in 2016 into 2017. I had gone with Cliff on a motorcycle trip, and we stopped on the east side or the west side of the mountains and took a picture in the morning with the fog rolling over. And it's something I had never seen because I'd always spent more time in or more on the eastern side. Well, we spent the whole time on the west side, and it was overcast, a lot of it, a little bit of rain here and there, and it was gorgeous. And you had just gotten your new phone.
Yes.
With the the iPhone, whatever, with the camera, and I think I had our big camera. And we got some, I'm going to put these photos up here of just the mountains disappearing into the fog. And of course, when you get that diffuse light, it makes for such amazing photos. So we took just picture after picture. It was beautiful. And
yeah, I wasn't the only one this time.
Yeah, it was amazing. But we didn't find anything. And
I think you said we covered maybe 25 to 30 miles in that time
period.
We
hiked over 30 something miles total.
And part of that time, hence the nap, okay? So part of that time, there were storms coming in. It wasn't super cold. It was just a really nice day. And so, we got to watch the storms coming in and going by. And at one point, you had an idea and you were going to go look off in a different direction. And I told you, okay, well, I'm going to take a nap right here under this bush. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
Got rained on a little bit, but otherwise it was a very pleasant nap.
I have a video. Unfortunately, it's on my Android with the variable frame rate, which I probably can't mix into this. But yeah, I've got the video of just me walking through the weeds, and there's Nicole crashed out, taking a nap, just laying in the dirt, didn't, you may have put out a towel or something, but so it was neat. We didn't find anything, but we didn't know how much was there, what to do. So we stayed as long as we could, and we picked up our crap and we went, and we stopped at that little restaurant. There's one restaurant there.
Oh, I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
This is the cool part. Why can't I remember the name of it?
Oh, Rosita's.
Did we stop in at the bar on the first time or the second time?
Second time.
Okay.
It was perfect. We found it when we did. So we went back, and I was pouring over all this, and I was taking our GPS data of where we searched and calculating all this stuff. And here's the thing about wreck chasing. If it hits you, if it hooks you, you kind of start to get into it, and it does. So I get an email from the park superintendent in the Guadalupe Mountains, Mike Medrano, and Mike goes, "Hey, dude, I've been looking at all this stuff, and here's what you need to check this out." One of the things that we use, Google Earth data goes back to about 84, and the 84 stuff isn't very good. So we go back and use aerials and the old map aerials, and they're typically from around 52 to 54 in this area, and they flew over with an airplane, they took pictures, and they drew maps on it. And we've talked about this over the Nike missile program and all this other stuff. There are gaps in it because they put missile silos and crap like that. Well, you can kind of follow the dates and see when they worked it. So they would start over here. They would sort of like plow a field. So they might have got to this part. Over here was 1952 and over here was 1954. I didn't really know how to use the system. It's public. USGS aerial photos. I forget the name of it. It'll hit me. You can look it up. Just Google USGS aerials and you'll find it. Mike Medrano called me and he goes, "Hey man, go to this site, click this, that, and the other, and look at this frame." So here's where it got weird. And here was the break. So we've had 2 breaks. Craig Fuller, Aviation Archaeology, found the airplane, found the missing plane. So Mike Medrano finds out, here's a series of photos taken over that area when they were mapping. Several months later, they came back and took 1 frame and none other. So there's this sore thumb in the middle of these. So, it's January, what year are we talking about? 54. So it's like 1953, 1953, 1953, 1953, 1954. And then nothing else until they did it again in 74. We figured out what happened. So imagine the Navy's position now. This plane crashes in the middle of sand dunes. And everything looks the same. It's hard to discern. So they go, and the pilot is like, "I kind of went that way and hit the ground, and then I walked this way." So they knew where to go enough to capture it in 1 frame. They had to have retasked that mapping mission to come back and take 1 picture and then leave. So now we have this old frame, single frame photograph, and we got to find this airplane on it. And this is not super high resolution stuff. So I laid it all over in Google Earth, and I've got old aerials and getting into the satellite data. And then we found out suddenly this road appears. Poof. In the middle of this ranch, a road appears and terminates at 1 spot. So let's go look at that spot. And on that spot is a scratch in the ground. I'm going to put it up right here. This is a before and after. And it looks like an airplane at the end of the scratch. And if you think back to the photos, it's positioned the same way. And we measured it, and it matches everything. So we stuck a pin in that one. And we rebooked. We stayed at yet another one in a group of several. And it's weird. It's like an old bunkhouse or something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it looked to me like maybe a church hall that had been divided into, or later on divided into rooms.
And she had cottages there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we booked a small one just because we had to get, we knew what we were going to be doing. And we plugged that into the GPS and took off, and it rained on us, and we found it.
Yeah, the first day.
First day. Yeah, we walked right up on it. So what we found was small wreckage. And the road was essentially gone, the road that was built to it. And I remember that night, over drinks, we were sitting there talking and looking at her. And it was after we get home, and we think, at the time, there was no road big enough to get a truck in there, so they cut one. And we think once it was cleared that the ranchers used that for a trash pit, because we found a lot of pieces of burned aluminum. And then we found other junk that had nothing to do with an airplane. So we think they just took that as an opportunity. Hey, we got this cool road that goes out in the middle of nowhere, and they used it for a trash pit. So I'm going to put this picture up here. This is an armored plate that I believe this is the one that protects the pilot. We figured out it goes under the seat, and it's still there, big giant piece. Everybody asks, did you bring it home? What wreckage you know? Here's the cool thing. When we found it, we turned over all of our data to the Park Service, and it's now an actual park resource. So it's part of the thing. So the crash just got lost to antiquity. So, I mean, it had been found at one time, and then it just, nobody cared, and then it went away. And that's what we found. So the next part of it.
Well, first off, we went back to the room, to the little cottage, to make a celebratory drink, get warm, because the second trip was a lot colder, a lot more uncomfortable.
It was wet. Yeah, it was cold and wind and wet and then hot. And then
was this still January? Whenever?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Yeah.
It was like a week or two later.
Yeah, it was pretty close together.
Okay.
And so after we chilled out, mellowed out, with the boozed out, had some dinner, we decided to go out on the town.
Yeah. So my friend that worked there, or her husband used to live there, was from there, said, you guys need to go to the sheep herder bar and meet Bonnie. Bonnie's the lady in that video.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we did. And that was
An event.
That was an event. That is, that was a scene out of a movie.
Okay.
So everything in the video, that's Bonnie. We go to this bar, and here's a picture. I have the picture we took at the front. I took a picture. I think I snapped it with my phone. And yeah, that's right. You know what? I remember that because we mixed drinks, and we were sitting out on the patio, and it was cold.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, oh, yeah, we got to go check out that bar. So we got dressed, and we were like in bathrobes or something, and we took off. Yeah. And we go in there, and we open the door, and there's Bonnie. Big head of blonde hair. She's how old?
She looked like she was in her 60s or 70s.
But she was older than that.
Okay.
Yeah, she was well older. She doesn't look as old as she is. So there's Bonnie and a lady about the same age, Hispanic lady, and they were playing cards at a table in this bar. And it was like the only light in this bar was over the table.
Everything else was dark. Turned out for real.
And it's a big bar. So it's like a bar and a couple of pool tables. And I said, are you guys open? And she looked at us and she goes, yeah. Like, you know. And we're like, okay. I feel like I just walked into your living room, but okay. And she said, what would you guys like? And so Nicole is, the mixed drink connoisseur. And Nicole's going to add, when you say, what would you like to drink? She's going to ask what liquor you have. It's only a certain kind of rum, only a certain kind of blah, blah. If it's this kind, I want it mixed with this. She's like Sally Field in with the sandwich, and what was the When Harry Met Sally? Not Sally Field, Meg Ryan's character in When Harry Met Sally. So she negotiated what she wanted to drink. And here's how I knew it was going to be a good day. Bonnie looks at me. She's standing behind the bar, and she says, what do you have? And I just kind of looked at the fridge behind her, and I said, let me have one of those Coronas. She says, you got it. She opens a Corona, and she's talking to me, and I'm paying. And she pours a shot for herself and drops it. I'm going, this is going to be one for the books. It's like, this is going to be one of those nights. And so we told her why we were there, and we got the download on the history of Del City. It was fantastic. We had a great time. Mm-hmm.
She was a real sheep herder at one time.
Yep. Yeah. It was amazing. And where I was going with this was in all the interviewing and stuff I've done with people over the years, and the kind of conspiracy stuff and famous stories. We asked everyone about this airplane, and every story of it was confused with the more famous ones. So when we ask people about the lost airplanes, we hear about the buried B-17 or the B-24, B-26. Oh, man, the Liberator up at the top of the mountains. We hear about that stuff, but nobody really knew about this except one old guy. He said he remembered them chucking it out.
So was that because during the first trip when we went to the restaurant, Matt was asking around, asking the locals, and some of them looked at him like, "What?" And some of them were a little, looked a little suspicious, sideways at him, but some of them said, "I don't, no, there wasn't a wreck out there. We don't know anything about a crash out there."
Yeah, it was lost even amongst the locals. So yeah, we had a blast hanging out with Bonnie. It was a lot of fun.
That documentary, the Tales from Del City, or Del, Texas. Was that something that you found out about then, or had you guys already known about
later.
that?
You found out about that later because we watched it later.
Yeah. I think there was.
Didn't she even tell us about that?
That's what I'm really asking. If she told you about it, and so you guys went and searched out for it, and kind of like
I think
with
so. There are pictures in that bar. Oh God, I hope that place stays open. If I had more time on this planet, I would like to take my fortune and just move to Del City and reopen that little bar. I don't remember. You know what? I think she had a poster or flyer or something. There are pictures of her with famous people and all kinds of crazy stuff, and that may have been where we found out about it.
Well, I know when you guys did that Northern Exposure thing, and I can't remember the name of the city.
K-Bear.
Yeah.
My K-Bear glass right here.
But whenever you guys were out there, you found out about runner stumbles.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was trying to see, if it was kind of the same thing with this, or if it was you knew about the documentary and then you went into...
No, I'm almost positive, as positive as I can be these days, but almost positive that she's the one who told us about that.
Yeah, that sounds right. She told us a lot of cool stories and how big the place used to be, and all the
military testing and.
Well, okay. Here's the interesting part about that place. That whole area was on the kind of circuit of Carlsbad Army Airfield. We talked about this in another episode with all of the bombing schools. So Carlsbad had a bomber school there. We found spent .50 caliber ammunition and links, so they were shooting out there. There's no other reason for that to be there. There was no armament on this plane, and somebody was just out there shooting. And I think it was Bonnie that told us about how if any of those pilots had ever come into that bar, they probably would have got punched in the face because they would dump trash and all kinds of stuff out there. If they were out training, and soda cans and, wrappers and stuff that they were dumping them out of the planes, and cows were eating it, that there was not a good relationship out there. Now, I don't know where the targets were or anything else, but we later found out when I got to talking to Tom Bemis, and he's mentioned in an earlier pod, I'd love to get him in here. They're just north, and we were within a few hundred yards of it, but we wouldn't have crossed the fence. It's actually on private property on the far north end. We were within a few hundred feet of wings sticking up out of the ground from a collision.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's on the map. Again, we would never have gone out there. We wouldn't have just stumbled on it. But there was all kinds of stuff out there that we found from those operations. But yeah, that was a blast hanging out with Bonnie. And that was an experience of a lifetime. That was, and the end of an era. She passed away last year.
I think so.
It was about last year. Found out she had cancer, and I followed her on Facebook, and we talked back and forth. She remembered us, and She got sick and passed away pretty quick. So I have no idea what that dog is barking at. Is the door open? Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know. I thought I heard a cat.
Yeah, I thought I heard that too.
Oh, okay, that would do it. But that was definitely we found the airplane. Yeah, that's great. But we got to hang out with with Bonnie at the sheep herder. Yeah. So later, again, I found the pilot's family. It's a grandson. That was really cool, and that was a good trip altogether. So
I definitely recommend just going out there to check it out. It's just a neat little place.
Yeah.
Have you guys been back out there since, or?
No, we haven't, and I'd like to.
Yeah, we really should. And we made the find, and it was all kind of over and done. And we just kind of went on to other things, and always talked about going back. But it's also this is in the flat, so it's down low. And that means it's hot. Mm. So it's definitely a winter thing. I mean, we took heavy coats, and I don't think either one of us put them on. I mean, we got a little cold the second day.
Second trip we did.
The second trip, but that was it. So, yeah, again, not much left of the airplane. We got pictures of a few small parts. It was definitely carted out.
Got a picture of Matt. Matt had to arrange himself as the plane in the crash so that we could recreate it.
I think I still have that one.
I haven't seen that picture, so if you can find it.
Well, we were trying to just for the hell of it to show how much the terrain had changed, because it looked identical. I mean, it was, all the bushes were the same height, all the little bushes and all the everything. So we knew where the exact spot was. And here's what's amazing. The plane crashed. So he crashed. Let's see if I can get my hand. Yeah, so we'll use this camera. So he crashed and he skids. And the plane sat there for a while. We don't really know how long, but not more than a year. So they picked it up, and there is still a U-shaped little furrow in the ground. So, you laid something cylindrical in the sand for a while and then pick it up, and it's still there. So in all that time from 1954 to 2017, that's how much that terrain changed. That's how much rainfall it gets. And even the rain it got while we were there, it was just sort of spitting on you. So we were trying to take pictures, and I said, wait a minute. We've got to orient where the airplane is. So I went out and laid in the spot. Like, I think we still have that. I'll put it up. I'll put it up here. So yeah. So we got that picture. But so that's the story of our greatest crash find. So
that's pretty cool. It's a good story. I remember whenever you guys did this, whenever you went out there, and I remember, I guess you would have posted on Facebook that you had found it. And I remember kind of seeing that, but just all the really behind the scenes stuff for it, I didn't know just a whole lot about all of it.
It was.
He did a whole lot of work on that.
Yeah.
I still have not been bitten by the crash bug, but I have been bitten by the Del City hanging out with Matt bug.
Yeah, we had a good time. And I was telling her, again, normally this is usually the kind of thing that I would go with to my buddies, because it's, your head's down looking at maps. There's not a whole lot of time to take it in, and you're trying to hit your targets and plow your grids and do your stuff. But we really, and it was just the two of us the whole time. Nobody else could go, and even though we had the room, we had the 3-bedroom church to stay in. That was cool, but.
That the power went out in too. So we had to,
I forgot about the power failure. Yeah.
We restricted ourselves to the living room because the power went out.
Oh, they were ready for it too, because they had oil lamps and stuff. They said it happens all the time out there.
It was just neat. That was a neat way to spend the New Year's.
It was. That was definitely our speed. So the only thing, we couldn't bring the dog. So.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, because we were gone. I'm not taking her on a trip like that, but. It was some of the most spectacular views. It's if you can't hike hills, that is definitely the way to see the Guadalupe Mountains. That was a beautiful spot.
And it is, if you want to unplug, that's the place to do it.
Oh yeah.
And very little, well, intermittent service, so nobody's going to be bugging you on a cell phone.
Yeah, we were still, I was posting on Facebook and asking questions. We found some junk out there. We didn't know what it was. And we posted pictures to our little group, hey, what does this look like? Or whatever. So that was cool. But that was it. That was a big one. That was important because it had been lost to antiquity. I mean, it wasn't like we found one people had been searching for 60 years, but
it's a really cool story.
It is.
And it's impressive that he walked away from it, considering the injuries he had too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the family thought that was really cool that we found it. They'd always heard his stories, and they were glad to know where it was and all that. And as far as I know, I mean, anybody can hike up to it, just like any other crashes in the Guads. It's a pretty pleasant trip. It's a lot of sand. If you go, is one thing we did right is we plotted a way in that took us around with a lot of sand. But now when we came back, we actually went into the dunes. I got some cool pictures. I'll put those up here. We actually went into the dunes, and that was a blast. I mean, it was hard, but it was beautiful because it's a white sand. I mean, it's just it's a gypsum, right? Yeah, it's a white gypsum sand. So, but yeah, Del City, Texas, one restaurant, and I don't even know if there's a bar now.
We need to check it out.
Yeah, we got to go. Man, I hate that, but
one restaurant, one grocery store.
Oh yeah, and they had pizza. Did we get pizza there? They like
I don't think so.
The little defrosted pizza they sell at all the small town stores. Yeah.
I remember perusing their alcohol section.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a blast. That was a good time. So yeah, if you're on Airbnb, Laura Lynch, anything there's owned by her, and they're all fantastic, really sweet people.
And she does a great job with them. I mean, you'll be super comfortable.
Yeah. And if you just want to go see the area, Del City is a good way to do it. Everything else is primitive camping, and you're staying either there. I think there may still be a motel in White City or Carlsbad, but that's it. I mean,
well, and I remember thinking if I had known about that place when we were doing our hiking back in the earlier days of the marriage.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That would have been the way to go.
Yeah.
So I mean, because you get a shower, you can clean up, you don't have to eat camping food, you can eat real food.
Yeah.
It'd be a great place for day hikers.
Just take some of those MREs with the 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Well, 30-year-old now probably.
I have eaten sea rations in the Guadalupe Mountains. Yeah, like Vietnam era sea rations from the Civil Air Patrol days. But, yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like when you're our age and you think about it, that's a lot of time and money tied up in something. So you don't want to get out there and get hurt. And we, in fact, right before that, we were supposed to go up with her sister. She wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that is when I first blew out my hips so bad that I couldn't straighten up. And I told them I really don't feel safe going up there because I don't want you guys to have to carry me out. And, I mean, it was bad. And they decided to go anyway and got them set up. And when those girls came back a couple of days later, they looked like they had escaped from a serial killer's trunk. It was, but they had fun. So
yeah. It was a horrible hike. I mean, it was just strenuous for me. Beautiful views every single step of the way. Got to the campsite, beautiful campsite. Didn't sleep a wink. Super cold. Even though it was only October, when you're that
get
high
up top,
up,
yeah,
it was cold. Even with all the stuff we brought, it's. I'd recommend doing it for the experience because you won't see stuff like that without putting forth a little bit of effort. But I would plan for the day hikes from here on out.
Yeah.
So my old bones can rest in a bed and have a hot shower.
That made such a difference. I mean, sitting with your bathrobe on, drinking coffee, watching. She was in the shower getting ready, and I'm just sitting out there on the porch drinking coffee, and it was. Yeah. I thought this is the way I need to camp now. So, but yeah, it was good and flat. But yeah, Salt Basin Dunes, Guadalupe Mountains. Anybody can go up there.
In Del City.
Del City, Texas. Yeah. Los Angeles, I think, is the name. Is an angel. It had something to do with angels. Angels. Anyway, the only restaurant there. Really good food. Cool. Guys, we're done. To Colonel Zieba. Cheers.